few to get in front. To half-forward, Blair continued to run. Play by Geary. Well done by Eddie. Heard the umpire touch play on. Turns into a distinct disadvantage. Heaney mowed down though. Brilliant stuff from Geary. Gritted his teeth, the captain. Gives to Weller. Great pace. Bursting through. They're sharing it around. The skipper wants a goal.
And it is our pleasure to catch up with the skipper this week on Unpluggered. Jarryn Geary, thanks for jumping on with us.
How you going?
Now, it was a difficult year. Started off very well. Some injury concerns along the way for you personally. Captaining a very young group in transition post Nick Riewoldt. How's the challenge been for you along the way?
Oh, it certainly does. I've got to have, my first few years when you first come into the footy club, you're just worried about yourself and trying to, get a kick and trying to establish yourself as a player. But, sort of later on in your career, you've got an idea of where everyone is sitting on the list and how they're going mentally, or, they've got things going on at home that you need to be aware of. So, when you're an older player and certainly the captain, you've got to have your head around those things, which, is challenging at times because you've still got to prepare and play well yourself. So, there's a bit going on, but you've just got to work through it with the players and just make sure you're there for them if they need you.
Do you enjoy that challenge?
Yeah, I do. I do enjoy it. I enjoy the captaincy of the footy club. It's something that I struggled with embracing early because of the names that have come before me. But over the last couple of years, I've certainly become more comfortable with that. And like I said, I've become a lot more comfortable with that. I know I'm not going to sit up there with the great captains in terms of names that have come before me, but I certainly can leave the club in a better place the way I lead now and into the future. So that's what my focus is.
It was obviously a tough year with Richo being moved on. How did you go about, taking on that challenge?
It was a little bit harder for me because I wasn't playing a lot, and I couldn't really be out there to to help get past that. But it's always tough when you lose your coach. I think the club handled it really well. I think Richo handled it really well. He had 6 years where he's got us in a position now where I feel like we're in a really good place, and our Rats takes over, who's had a seamless transition. Really, I mean, it's tough when you take over from someone that you really have worked with for a long time, respect for, and you're a mate. So he was a mate of Richo's, and he's taken over from him. So, but he did a great job, Rats, and I'm really excited to have him. The boys love him. He's going to be challenging as a coach. He's already demanded that we improve in a lot of areas, which he's been public about, which is great, and really excited to have him on board.
And I understand post 2018 you had a heart-to-heart with Richo about, the direction of the club at that point?
Yeah, that was at the end of last year, and we had a disappointing year. And it wasn't the first time I'd given him feedback. Obviously, coach and captain continually give each other feedback, and it was probably just the nature in which he got that feedback. I think he was over in America, and it was a letter, and it was just a little bit of a critique of the year and what I thought he could do better. So it's probably been built up to be a bit more abrasive and abrupt than what it was, but I think it was just because it was a little bit confronting for him in the space he was at, that it got a lot of airtime.
So as we look to 2019, Brett Ratton at the helm, we know there'll be some significant list changes which are still to play out, but just personally for you, how are the confidence levels?
I mean, we ended up winning 9 games this year. We would have loved to have won a few more. We had our challenges throughout the year, and we lost a few players to injury throughout the year. So I think if we can have a healthy list, add a few players through the draft and trade period, and improve on this year, then we'll go okay.
I know you're the captain, and you may or may not stay away from these list management type areas. But what type of player would you be looking to recruit?
I think we've got a good nucleus of younger players now, so add a bit more experience would be nice. There's not too many older players still left on the list, so we can add some probably some outside run through the midfield, some class through the midfield, and that'll certainly help. So I think that's what we'll target. Dan Hannabury's first year, the 5 games, but was really going well towards the back end of the year. Can you give us an insight into his impact on and off field? Yeah, I think he had a frustrating year, Dan. Came to the club, obviously, as a highly prized recruit, and wasn't able to get out there as often as he would have liked, but he certainly had an impact off the field with the help of developing some of the younger boys. So, you look at the best and fairest, for example, and there's, 3 or 4 guys that get up there, the younger guys that really say that Hannah's was a key reason why they started to perform well in the back half of the year. So Hunter Clark, Nick Caulfield, Ben Patton, they did a lot of work with Dan, so his impact on their years is, something that he should be proud of, because those guys end up finishing pretty strongly.
The Jack Stephen situation, the will he, won't he with Geelong and all of those toing and froing, and we know that 12 months ago it was a very real prospect, and this has been a hard year for for Jack. How much have you spoken to him about where he's at?
Oh, we've had discussions more about how he's been going. I mean, he's had a tough year, mentally, and that's been communicated to everyone. So, you wrap your arms around him and make sure he's doing okay, in that space. And footy's an outcome of his happiness. So if he's happy in his life and he's playing good footy, then that's all I really care about. He's got a young family that he wants to look after and care for, and he needs to be in a good headspace for that. You can't keep prodding them if they don't want to talk to you about it. To Jack's credit, he was very open with it and quite courageous in coming out and speaking to us when it got to a point where it was too much for him. So, and the other, the message that to our players is that it doesn't discriminate. He's a guy who's, a 4-time best and fairest winner, plays really good footy week in, week out. So it's don't be, ashamed to come out and say if you've got issues, because it happens to everyone. It happens to to blokes that you think are seemingly happy in their lives and in their football careers. But it's more than just footy that tips people over the edge.
Just a few others before we wrap things up. David Rath obviously coming across formerly at Hawthorn, a good addition to the group.
Yeah, he's a great addition. At Hawthorn for a long time, Alex de Clarkson, and then obviously at the AFL for last 18 months. I think he was part of the coaching selection panel to get Rat. So a great addition. He'll help our coaches out. With his knowledge and his expertise, and he'll also help the development of our coaches going forward.
We've spoken about it a bit on our show today, and obviously at length over recent times. How tough has the Spud news been for the boys to process?
Oh, extremely tough. He's had a massive impact on the footy club over a number of generations. Since I've been at the footy club, I haven't met someone who's had that impact over so many generations of players. I think probably 4 generations, really. When he was playing and to now. So to have been able to do that and have that impact on not only players but fans is huge.
Now, Danny's spent a lot of time down at the club recently as an assistant and skills coach, and a very passionate St Kilda man, and you as a captain and a defender would have certainly been one of his favourites, I'm sure. How did you find out the news?
I got a phone call from the footy club the day it happened, so it was a phone call to let me know that was what had happened and how we went about conveying that message to the players. Obviously, we're on leave at the moment, and we want the players needed to know because they've had so much to do with Spud. So it was how we convey the message in the most appropriate way. He was so passionate about the footy club that he always, whenever he spoke about the footy club, he almost teared up. So he still had his last plane jumper a couple of years ago. He took a group of myself and the first year players down to his house in Indented Heads on the Bellarine Peninsula, and he brought out his last jumper, which still stunk of him and his playing days, and had beer and everything all over it. He hadn't washed it. And as soon as he picked it up and started talking about it, he started crying. He just loved the footy club. He was so emotional about St Kilda as a club, and he just wanted the club to succeed so much. So whenever we brought new players into the footy club, ever since I've taken over as captain, I've always got Spud to come down and speak to him, just because of the way he spoke about the footy club.
Using things like Wednesday, for example, when you saw that enormous support at Moorabbin and the lap of honour and the tears in the crowd, but when you talk about building a legacy, is that something where you can sort of sell it to players and say, well, look, this is a guy that meant so much to the club 25 years after he retired, still leaving this mark on football? This is how significant it can be for you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And being back at Moorabbin probably gives us that opportunity. So such a special place for St Kilda fans and supporters and players, past players. So being able to have a place like that where all our fans can come together and celebrate a grade of the footy club is been so important for the footy club to get back to Moorabbin. So we can tell stories about the footy club now, whereas being able to have a place like that and then being able to send your legends away and show people that come together at a place that's the heart and soul of this footy club is really important. How's
the leg also after a couple of setbacks?
Oh, it's taking its time, to be honest. It hasn't been the smoothest of recoveries. It was hopeful that I'd get surgery and be bouncing back pretty quick, but I've had 3 surgeries on that now and hopefully no more. So I'm starting to get moving now, and hopefully from now on it starts to progress pretty strongly.
The club copped a bit of heat for even taking you over for that game, coming off the long injury from the corky. Was it just purely and simply misfortune in injuring yourself again, or was there perhaps a temptation to maybe think, well, when we're back in Australia, I'll come back the following week?
Yeah, I think I was right to go. to be honest, it was probably my fault. I'd probably thought I didn't know why I thought I could run down the middle of the ground and just lope around thinking that no one was going to chase me. Connor Rosie snuck up on me and I kicked the back of my leg. So it was more my fault, really. I just my game sense and game awareness at the time was pretty poor. So I was right to go. Maybe in hindsight you could have waited another week, but it wouldn't have been because my leg wasn't right. It would have just been the fact that we were in China. But I played because I was ready to go. How
quickly did the first corky develop? Because we saw the incident where you sort of half smothered the ball at the top of the goal square, and then what was it immediately after the game that started to become apparent that situation was far worse than a normal corky?
It probably took a little bit longer. I felt sick throughout the back end of the game walking off, so there was something going on. I felt a bit sick, but then I didn't really get the really bad pain until probably probably when I was driving home. I started to get a bit of pain, and then had something to eat, and then looked in the mirror and it was quite large, and said it to my wife, and she didn't care, and then she started to care a little bit once she saw how big it was and how much pain I was in. So, I think we played a day game, and then I was in hospital by about 11 and then operated on by about 2. So
a couple that hurt the club over the course of the year. One was Paddy McCartan. Obviously, that was an emotional one. I think a lot of people heard him speak about sort of what he was going through. He was at Moorabbin with the boys on Wednesday as part of that funeral. How's he sort of tracking along in terms of, I guess, his ambitions to play again and even the impacts that he was having after that knock in Ballarat?
Yeah, he seems to be going better than he was at through that middle stage of the year. He went over to the States and sort of got some answers that he was looking for, but they're still working through that. So I'm not sure when they'll get a definitive answer on what his future looks like. We're hopeful he'll be able to play with us next year, but they'll keep working through that.
And Dylan Robertson, I guess the other one, which is the scarier one in a way, given sort of how all that is. Is it a case that he can train okay, but when you get into match intensity, that's where it starts to be a problem? And is there any word on how he's going?
I think it's probably a little bit more positive than we probably thought. Again, he went over to America and chances, and he probably got a little bit more clarity on that. So he's continuing to train now, which is good. So I think they'll continue to look at what's best for Dylan and how he can get out there on the park again. And I think they're pretty hopeful that it might be more positive than it was what it was looking like.
Well, Jarryn, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone and wish you all the best, and hope you can hit pre-season full swing with some nice inclusions, and that 8-year finals drought will be a little bit closer to ending.
Will do. Thanks, mate.